Welcome back to Sledgehammer Horror, guys. I am Ken Sledge, and let's talk horror. Now, today I am joined by the beautiful Carmen Hubis. Carmen, how you doing today?
Good, doing great. Thank you. Glad to be here.
No, it is an honor to have you. But before we
Oh,
talk about why you are here, Carmen, I would like for the people that don't know you to get to know you a little bit.
okay.
Carmen lives in Orange County, was born in LA, so been a West Coast girl whole life
Yes.
for the most part. Um, She loves watching movies and enjoyed working in the film industry throughout the 80s. She had some small roles and speaking parts in movies and commercials, did lots of work as
Mhm.
extras. And you
Yes.
guys may be thinking to yourselves, she looks a little familiar. There's this little movie that us horror fans love. We just made it actually into our top 10 gateway horror movies of all time, and that is the movie Beetlejuice. And Carmen was an extra. She was a featured extra in Beetlejuice. She played the dead secretary from the Netherworld. So I got to know, Carmen. I know you're getting in makeup. You're doing all these things with costume design, which you look amazing. You look beautiful in the film. Um,
Thank you.
what was it like to be a part of a movie that is now a huge, huge cult classic? Did you guys know you were doing something special at the time?
Well, at the time, I didn't know it was going to be like this, still popular over 30 years later. It was a super extra fun set to work on, just especially the scene I was in, because it was in the Netherworld and everybody had the makeup. So even just when we're waiting for our scene, sitting around the set, it was just really cool to see everybody made up and um, just, seeing the actors. Because sometimes when you're on the set, as an extra, sometimes it may get a little long and
Mhm.
just sitting there waiting, but this time it was like exciting all the time.
Well,
Just
and the
always
good
lots
part
to
about
see.
that is, like you are etched forever in history. When you're doing these parts, like at the time, like you said, we're just having fun on set. We're doing what we think is
Mhm.
going to be a cool, campy, a kid-based horror film. Obviously, PG-13. There is some heavier parts in the movie, but you're this secretary in the Netherworld, and you know now, years later, they're making a sequel. That's how much people still love Beetlejuice, and people are still pushing like we need
Yeah.
more, we need more, we need more. And this is a universe that you are in forever. And Beetlejuice is so popular to the point year in and year out, people that go to the physical Spirit Halloween stores, Beetlejuice always has its featured racks of things that are there because even now, all these years later, the movie is so important and so huge to people in the horror community and in the horror comedy community. It's one of those films that is just universally loved by everybody, and it's something that you are a part of forever. What does that feel like for you?
Well, it's actually pretty cool because I like you mentioned earlier, I did do like some I had some small speaking parts, excuse me. And it's funny, it's like this movie, I was a featured extra, I didn't speak, but I've gotten like the most feedback from this movie and people like are excited to know I was in this movie. And it's very exciting to see that people still like this movie. It's a classic, and they're doing a sequel now. So there's even the musical too, which I'm hoping to
Yeah,
see next year. It was just out in LA, and I missed it, but I know it's going to be coming to Orange County next year. So I want to see that. But
that's
yeah,
awesome.
it's really nice.
Yeah, and like I said, like this is a part of history. Like this movie is so special, and there's so many different like people that I meet that I converse with talk about how much of an impact Beetlejuice had on them, growing up. And it's not your typical haunted house story. This is where the
Mhm.
ghosts are not, demons and scary trying to hurt people. They just want to be in peace and have their house back. Like really we feel for them. And I just think it's really amazing. And from that to this day, you love to cosplay. You love doing things like that. You've been Rita Repulsa, the witch from
Yeah,
Power Rangers, at a couple different conventions. And another
correct.
fun fact about you is you are a big dancer. One of your favorite pastimes is dancing.
Oh yeah.
Um, Zumba events, dancing and Zumba videos for Danny Dance Fitness and Eddie's and Garcia. So like, you're doing these roles as extras, you get speaking roles. You love doing cosplaying, you love to dance. What's it feel like to like juggle all these things all the time?
Well, I'm not doing the acting stuff anymore. I did it I did it in the 80s. It was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. And then in the 90s, then I had my son. He's 26 now. So I took a little break from that and I started getting into dancing once he was, older, like 17, 18. And I enjoy doing the videos and just going to class, going to events. It's fun. And sometimes it goes with that because when I did do the acting and stuff, I actually worked on a lot of music videos. Back then,
Okay.
MTV was really popular and it was different than MTV nowadays. It was, they did a lot of music videos, maybe more similar to what you see on YouTube now.
Right.
So that was good.
Yeah, back when music television was about music. Go figure. Um,
Exactly.
and it's funny because I could go all day about MTV. I used to put a VCR, a VHS in my VCR
Uh-huh.
every morning before I went to school and record MTV all day just so I could come home that night and watch the music videos and see like the cool new music videos that were coming out. So I could go on a whole spiel about that, but I will not. And the reason why is because this is not about me. It's about you.
Oh,
So Carmen, you've had an amazing impact, even if it's just a small role in Beetlejuice, because butterfly effect. You don't get casted in that movie. Who knows what else could have happened and the movie could have fallen apart. Maybe that's a bit dramatic, but with the butterfly effect, you never know. Every piece has to be in place for something to work. Now, when we're talking about a movie that's so influential like Beetlejuice, in order for you to
mhm.
be an extra in such an amazing horror movie that touched so many of our lives, horror had to start for you somewhere. So, Carmen, I would like to go back to the past and talk about what
Okay.
got you started in the horror genre, your first horror movie. And Carmen, the first horror movie that you watched was
The first horror movie that I watched in the movie theater was Phantom of the Paradise. So
See, and
that's
I
an
know
old
if
one.
my buddy Dice Roland is watching, they are super happy right now because Dice is the one that turned me on to Phantom of the Paradise. So, do
Okay.
you remember about how old you were the first time you had seen it?
Yeah, 12 years old. I was
Oh,
12.
and you did see this one theatrically.
I seen it in the movie theater, yes, when it came out. So now I'm dating myself. But yes,
No,
I was 12 years
that's
old.
that's so incredible because this is such an underrated gem of a film. I don't think this film
Oh,
gets
yeah.
the love and appreciation that that it deserves to have. It's a very fun movie to get into. And do you remember who you were with when you went to the theater to see it?
Yeah, I was actually with my sister, my brother, and his three friends.
Oh, nice. Well,
So,
now I got to
so we
know,
were here.
were you older sister or younger
I
sister?
was the oldest sister.
Okay, so they were the cool ones getting to tag along with their big sister.
Yeah.
Well, and
Yeah.
again, this is a movie that I feel like is a very underrated gem. It doesn't get the love and respect it
Oh, yeah.
deserves. But which scene would you say, Carmen, it was that affected you the most from Phantom of the Paradise?
Well, um, one of I'd say the electrocution scene where the guy gets electrocuted and they all seem to think it's part of the show and the
Mm-hmm.
audience is cheering. That was pretty impacting. That I would have to say that's the most, but there were two other scenes. There was the one where the a guy Winslow, he gets his face smashed by the record press. That always stayed with me. And there's a little history I found out about that after that. It turns out, I guess, when they were doing that was an actual record press. And when they were doing it, they
Oh,
had like pads on there and shocks to keep it from closing. And I guess apparently the machine was so strong, it started closing. So I heard he got out of there. But the yell that you hear in the movie, it's not acting, it's
yeah, that's
real.
real.
So that was interesting trivia because I decided, since I was 12, I said, I have to watch this movie once again. I rented it and there was trivia stuff and I looked into it a little bit. And that was one of the interesting things I found out about it. The other scene I really was impacted by was when Swan, the music producer that steals Winslow, the songwriter's music, when he was making the pact with the devil, when he's in the tub making the pact with the devil, selling his soul. That had an impact.
Well, especially like you said, when you're young, the age of
Oh
12,
yeah.
and we've demonic possession and Ouija boards and the devil.
Oh yeah.
That's just the scariest thing you can ever imagine at that point. So I can see why that scene would have had such an impact on you, especially at a young age.
Oh yeah.
So, Phantom of the Paradise is a movie, like I said, that is so underrated. And it's a movie that I feel should get a lot more attention to it. Now, in saying that, right now, remakes, requels, sequels, that's kind of all the rage in Hollywood. People love a good remake. Is Phantom of the Paradise a movie that you would like to see remade today?
Oh yeah, I'd love to. I mean, I think I agree. It was totally underappreciated. As I was watching the movie and I did a little research on it, I found that it was a failure at the box office. It was only successful in two places globally, and that was Paris,
Yeah.
France, and Winnipeg, Canada. Now, Winnipeg is like very interesting because I found out that in theaters there, it played for 4 months consecutively and went
Wow.
on to play sporadically till 1976. And
Wow.
so, and it was so loved there that they actually did a documentary in 2019 about that whole phenomenon, how they were like crazy about this movie and nobody else pretty much liked it.
Yeah.
And they did the Phantom Palooza there in 2005 and 2006 to commemorate the movie for the 30th anniversary. And they invited in 2006 the cast, and they even had Paul Williams do a concert there. And the ironic thing about this film, like Paul Williams plays Swan, the record producer. He steals the songwriter Winslow's music. Now, something I found out interesting, the music was all by Paul Williams, ironically. And when Winslow sings the music, that's actually Paul Williams.
That's awesome.
So that's like some interesting trivia. I was so glad that I rented the movie and found out the stuff about it because that was pretty awesome to know. It's like, wow. But
No, I love behind the scenes. I love trivia. So anything you got for me, bring it. I love to hear this stuff. It makes it so much more interesting when you get on the filmmaking side of things and hear these amazing behind the scenes things that go on.
well, there's a couple other things I found out too. A couple things that were really interesting to me were that in the record, you know how when he's making the music, when Winslow's working on the music, that was the
Yeah.
actual recording studio, and that was an actual built-in what do they call it? A synthesizer, an electronic synthesizer built into the wall that still, they said it's still used today. So I thought that's something that back then they didn't appreciate. They didn't have that kind of stuff, that technology, and it's amazing
Right.
that it's still used today. um let's see, there was something else. I did look something up and I put there was, let me see, I put something that I thought was interesting. um well, one of the things, oh, I know. The other thing that I wanted to touch base on about it was that even though the movie, it, like we said, it didn't do good back then, it did build um, a fan base. It's like what you consider a cult film.
Mm-hmm.
And it did score, which I thought was interesting, 81% on Rotten Tomatoes. So I like that.
Yes.
Yay. So
It's
that
funny because
so that was good.
I have never heard of this film until Dice Roland, one of my fellow YouTube friends. They
Uh-huh.
introduced us to Phantom of the Paradise, and they were like, Ken, you and Ashley have to watch this movie. I know your sense of humor. I know how you feel about horror. Like, you would love this film. And Ashley and I fell in love with Phantom of the Paradise. So I got to
Oh,
give
yeah.
one more shout out to Dice Roland because without them, I would have
Oh.
never even seen this movie.
Well, no, that's awesome. I'm glad that he told you about it and enjoyed it
Mm-hmm.
because it's like a horror, it's like a rock musical, but a comedy as well. And it's almost like a parody, but a tribute as well. And
Right.
the things that they showed in the film, I think maybe the reason like it didn't do as good, I think the timing, the year 1974,
Mm-hmm.
some of the things in that movie, obviously now we wouldn't think nothing of it, but back then, more
Yeah.
conservative. It might be a little over the top, a little scandalous or inappropriate for them. So I think that had a lot to do with it.
Right. I can totally see that too. And I'm glad that you would like to see this movie remade today. So we talked about some of your scenes, Carmen, that affected you the most. But what would
Hmm.
you say your favorite scene from Phantom of the Paradise is?
I'm gonna say it's still that electrocution scene with Beef and the crowd cheering and him just like ah. They thought what a great show, right? But
Right.
and just the people on the stage, they knew it wasn't real. We knew it wasn't real. They were shocked, but the audience just going
Ate it up.
crazy. But you
Yeah.
know, there was one other scene that stands out that I was gonna say that's really interesting that you didn't see back then. Um, in the film, there's the scene at the beginning, towards the beginning, when they're going to open the Paradise, which was the concert hall
Mhm.
where they were doing these performances. They had the band The Juicy Fruits, which reminds me kind of like of Grease. Now,
Yeah.
there was that scene with the split screen. I mean, that you see nowadays, but back then, a split screen where showing the people singing, and then they have the the bomb scene. I'll just say that. But
Yeah.
you know, it was a split screen. That's like something. Wow. You know, I don't think back then any other films had that.
Right. Well, and again, I think that in a lot of different aspects, this film was ahead of its time and what it was trying to
Mhm.
do and what it was trying to portray. And maybe if it was released 5, 6 years later, it would have had a more welcoming reception. And I think all about timing, all about timing. And this film didn't hit the right timing, unfortunately, but maybe fortunately, because now it's a huge cult classic. So, um,
Yeah.
we talked,
Well,
Carmen, about your first horror movie and what Phantom of the Paradise means to you. But now I do want to throw you a little bit of a curveball here for a second. My little
okay.
buddy Ghostface is here, Carmen, and he has a
Oh,
question for you. What's
okay.
your favorite scary movie, Carmen? What is
Oh
your
my.
favorite horror movie of all time?
Wow. Well, ooh, that's hard. There's can I say two? They're different, a
Yeah.
little different, because I've always had a thing for vampire movies. And
Okay.
actually, like my first movie that I saw that was scary was actually a vampire movie on TV, but it was
Yeah.
like a Spanish scary movie with this guy that's called El Santo. He's like the saint mass wrestler that was fighting off the vampires. But I have to say, Interview with a Vampire, oh my gosh. I love that movie, Interview with a Vampire. But I'm going to say horror, scary movie. I have to give it up to Halloween.
Okay.
Halloween. The first one, because I know there's like so many. I
Well, I mean,
always
and
love that.
still, Interview with the Vampire, such an iconic film as well. I mean, Halloween
Mhm.
'78, obviously, it didn't start the slasher genre, but it perfected it. It showed you the way to do the
Yeah.
formula to create a great slasher film. But Interview with the Vampire is another one of those movies that really nails down the fact that the sexiest type of
Oh, yeah.
villain is a vampire. You know, it doesn't
Mhm.
matter if it's Count Dracula, it doesn't matter who. The vampire is the sexiest villain
Oh,
that
yeah.
there is. And you know, even when you go back to the Universal Dracula was, sexy, Bela Lugosi and them, sexy. And then
Mhm.
you go to the Hammer horror where it's all the gothic aesthetic and so amazing. And like I said, the vampire has always been the mind control, the mastery of the women, and the sexiness that comes along with the vampire. And Interview with a Vampire has just a sexy cast to nail down what they're trying to do. So I can
Oh, yeah.
completely understand why you would go with a movie like Interview with the Vampire, which you're full of gems today because that's another one of those underrated gems. When people talk about vampires, we get the Lost Boys, Dracula, Fright
Oh,
Night.
Lost Boys. Yeah.
Interview with a Vampire is one of those that kind of flies under the radar, but it's still just such a sexy movie. I love that movie so much. So, I do, Carmen, want to say thank you for taking your time to come and talk horror with me. And for our viewers, I didn't say it at the beginning because I was still kind of starstruck and in awe that I had Carmen here, but I do have her social media links down in the description of this video. So make sure that you are following her on social media so you can stay up to date on everything she has coming up for us. But before I let you go, Carmen, we always bounce back to the same question. We're going to go back to Phantom of the Paradise, and what we're going to do is rank this movie on a skull count. Now, we're not ranking it on acting, production, score, direction, nothing like that, Carmen. We're not being critics. all we're doing is ranking this movie on how much it affected you on your first viewing. So 0 skulls being not effective, 5 being extremely effective. You can use half and quarter skulls anywhere in the middle. Carmen, what would your ranking of Phantom of the Paradise be?
On my first viewing, definitely a 5. I give it 5. For sure, 5 skulls, because like I
Right.
said, I was 12 and it was the first thing like that I had seen.
That's
Yeah.
amazing. And again, I can't thank you enough for taking time out to come and hang out with me. I've been a big fan of yours for a very long time, and being able to hear some of your backstory and knowing all the amazing things you do, whether it's, cosplay or dance and these things that, you selflessly gave up something for your kid, which is something that is so admirable. And,
Thank you.
as somebody that was missing a parent in their life, that's so brave and just the selfless and the courage it took to do something like that. But to know where your priorities were, that's special. And that's something that is bigger than any movie that you could have ever been in. So
Oh,
thank you
thank
for
you
not
so
just the
much.
amazing memories you've given us, for being a great person, because that at the end of the day means more than anything. And the way that you guys can find out how great of a person she is by following her on social media. Those links are down in the description below. Carmen, please don't go anywhere. I have a couple more questions for you. Everybody else, as always, if you haven't already, please like and subscribe. It really does help the channel more than you know. And follow Sledgehammer Horror on social media. All our links are in the description as well. But until next time, keep talking horror, stay what you are, and we'll see you
Thank you,
guys.
everyone.